Welcome back to Between Screenings. This is the third episode of the podcast, and today we're going to be talking about all things Halloween with the witching season upon us. What better to do to celebrate Halloween than chat about your favourite horror movies? We all like to be scared, and 2025's turned up a lot of amazing horror. So we're going to talk about that, and we're also going to talk about our all-time favourite horror/genre/scary films. How are you, Tom? Anyway, how's your week been?
My week's been pretty spooky. I took a trip back to Manchester and it didn't stop raining, which felt very appropriate given it is the spooky season. What else have I done this week? I've reviewed, I can say this now, I've reviewed the new It TV series.
Oh, okay. Well, that's worth talking about. That's spooky.
That is spooky. I think that's what I'd say. But I'll let you quiz me on it if you really want to talk about it. But yeah, no, it's been a good week. How about you?
It's been good. I've been down in Brighton. I've been going to the supermarket with my daughter, and the problem at this time of year, Tom, is the supermarket is just terrifying because all of the packaging is suddenly spooky. So I saw an Instagram video of someone doing it last year. So now whenever I go to the supermarket with my daughter, I go, every time I see a spooky packet.
She like that?
No, she absolutely hates it and thinks I'm very embarrassing, which obviously makes me want to carry on doing it even more.
I actually do hate going to supermarkets at this time of year because I love sweets. And anytime you go in, the first aisle you always walk down is full of sweets and like
reduced price sweets.
Yeah, and crisps with like bizarre flavors. Like, I think Doritos have a Stranger Things black garlic tie-in crisp. And despite the fact that sounds gross, I really want to try it.
We bought some. They've already got Christmas stuff out in the supermarket as well, obviously. And we've bought Santa's favourite mystery Pringles flavour already. We've not eaten them. They're in the cupboard waiting for Christmas because, Pringles don't go off for, 25 years or something. So I think we'll be safe in a couple of months.
Yeah, you'll be grand. You'll be fine. I hope then better than the Mario mystery flavour they did, because that was rank.
Strange, isn't that all these weird mystery flavours they make up for TV and film tie-ins end up not being that nice?
It's very strange. Although the Ghostbusters Pickled Onion Monster Munch were great because they were just Pickled Onion Monster Munch. And,
it's almost as if they've discovered all the really good flavours of crisps already, and there aren't any other good ones because they found them all.
It is almost like that, Neil, yeah.
So go on then, tell me a little bit about the It TV series, because I've heard about it. Is it worth me adding to my watch list? Because I did text you the other day asking what to watch on TV, because I've got new episodes of something I'm watching on a Tuesday and a Wednesday, but I'm currently stuck for other days.
So I would say that, yes, it is. I really enjoyed it. However, I do have to be cautious. I do have to say that I am a big fan of the new It movies, the Andy Muschietti ones, the one that came out in 2017 and 2019. I was even on the set of It Chapter 2. So like these films are a little bit special for me, and they are very much in that world, by which I mean they're spooky, they're creepy, and they're a little bit gross, but the scares can be you can see the scares coming a mile off, if you know what I mean. Like okay. It's very like set up, bang, and then you're like, oh, that like release. It's almost, to borrow Martin Scorsese expression, it's like riding a roller coaster. You know the thrill is coming because you're climbing up the hill for it, and then you get that nice little break afterwards, and then the tension's ratcheting back up as it sets itself up yet again. But as someone who really enjoys Stephen King, and has read it and, a lot of King, they're working quite hard to build this like wider Stephen King narrative whilst sticking true to the book. So Dick Halloran turns up in it from The Shining, and he is in the book, which I always forget about because then I did need to remind myself of this. So I'm really enjoying it.
Okay. So maybe I'll give it a watch. I sort of remember the It series from the sort of 90s is when
Tim Curry one.
Yeah, the Tim Curry one. So that's kind of my It. I never watched the two new It films. They kind of passed me by. So
I think that the first one especially is well worth a watch. I think like how old's your eldest again?
Well, they are not watching horror films yet, Tom.
Oh, I think It is like, it's playing with that Amblin style. It's one big adventure. It's kids. It's Stranger Things. It's sort of, it is more violent, obviously, than Stranger Things. I think it's a 15, but I think it's a film. It could be a nice gateway movie to horror. Although I should say that I am a bad judge on this because I think I've told you this before. My gateway to horror was being babysat by my gran as a kid, and whatever was on ITV that night, like the Saturday movie,
Yep.
she was watching it. So that's how I saw Halloween, The Exorcist, Play Misty for Me Again when I was like 8.
Okay.
Like my yeah,
Not age appropriate.
Aliens. She didn't care because it was just like, well, if it's on telly, like they wouldn't put something dangerous on the telly, would they? So that was how me and my sister both saw a load of classic horror movies. And probably why the genre is so dear to my heart and why I like Halloween especially an awful lot.
Okay, so when you were going to sleepovers as a sort of tween, early teenager back in the day, you weren't so freaked out by the films where people would sort of pull that DVD or VHS out and be like, "Oh, look what we've got to watch tonight," while our parents don't know about it.
Kind of, yeah, I probably was because like I always enjoyed being scared. So I've never been like, oh, I'm too cool to be frightened by this. Even now when I go to the cinema, I like proper get into it. Like, I'm like hiding and unashamedly because that's what the film is supposed to do. It's not meant to be a delightful experience where I go, oh, I'm cool with this. I like the like to feel horrified, and that's what the genre is supposed to do.
What's the one film you remember from when you were younger that really, really scared you, or the one that everyone wanted to watch?
So this is a strange one because it's actually not that scary. But my dad let us watch Poltergeist.
Okay.
Yeah, and because it's Poltergeist is scary, but it's not like gory or particularly violent. It's just like spooky ghost shenanigans. Except there's one scene where one of the paranormal investigators later in the movie is looking in a mirror and his face starts to rot and fall off, and he's like ripping at his flesh and it's falling down the sink. And my dad always used to say, "You're not allowed to be in the room when this scene happens." Me and my sister had to go to the kitchen, shut the door, and he would tell us when we could come back in. So in my head, this scene reached like mythic proportions of, gross. Oh, it must be the most vile thing you've ever seen in your life. So anyway, cut to 2020. I can't remember if you remember 2020, Neil, but we were inside an awful
We
lot.
were maybe there was some reason we couldn't go very far.
Yes, and my partner and I, we were burning through a load of movies on her to watch list, including Poltergeist. And I warned her there's a scene in this movie, and it's probably one of the grossest things you're ever going to see in your life. She was like, okay, okay, okay. We watched it, and I like had to pause it and just apologize to her because of how naff and rubbish and not scary it is. His face completely it doesn't look like the actor. It's all of a sudden like a cut, and it looks like he's been stung by a bee and he's pulling wax off his face. I was just like, this is so rubbish, and I can't believe my dad didn't let me watch this as a kid. So that, strangely enough, is probably the film that stuck with me the most. Although I do remember when I was like 14, going around to a friend's house, and his dad, and great parenting here, had got a load of old video nasties for us.
Lovely.
We put them on and we watched Driller Killer. I think we may have watched Cannibal Holocaust. And like some of these really like, gnarly films that Margaret Thatcher banned, they were crap. Well, they weren't crap. That's not fair. But when you're a teenager who's, expecting some of the most hyper-realistic violence you've ever seen in your life, Driller Killer, whenever he puts the drill to someone, the film fades to red, and then the deed is done, and the blood is so bright red that you're just like, that's not real. And Cannibal Holocaust just bored us. Not a fun movie, but just found it boring rather than like squeamish. And I've never felt the need to go back and revisit those films.
I think the ones for me when I was growing up that I remember from sleepovers were Child's Play was a big one.
Mm.
So Chucky running around and doing his mad toy thing, and the first Nightmare on Elm Street films. So the original Nightmare on Elm Street, which is horrendously terrifying when you're that age.
I think the first Nightmare on Elm Street really stands up. Like, I think that because obviously that franchise sort of became a bit of a parody of itself because they realized Freddy was the main selling point of it.
Yes.
So you sort of made Freddy the hero. The kills, the inventive way in which he murdered people in dreams became the reason you were watching those movies. But that first movie, especially the dream sequence in the school where you see the body being dragged by some unseen presence into the boiler room is horrifying. We did did a screening of that a few weeks. No, she didn't. A few years ago, and I seeing it on a big screen was properly traumatizing because obviously when you watch something at home without just by yourself, it's spooky, but watching it with an audience and that like sharp intake of breath when people realize what they're seeing, next level stuff.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of imagination as well. You sort of hype yourself up when you're that age to what you're going to watch. So it's a film. It's already got an 18 certificate on the box, which is a bit naughty because you might be 12 watching it, and your parents might not know about it, and you hype yourself up to think it's going to be ludicrously scary. And sometimes they are, like the Friday the 13th film. The Chucky ones, I always kind of ended up finding just a bit funny. The worst experience I ever had watching it, the most horrifying experience I ever had watching a horror film, I don't know if I've told you this, was the first time I watched the Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Classic.
So I think I must have been 20, maybe 21. We all watched it. I was living in a shared house with some friends at the time, and we watched it. It is scary. It's properly scary.
I mean, it's horrible.
And then we all went to bed. I went up to my bedroom, turned the light on, the old school filament lamp blew and fused everything in the house. So,
oh my God.
And this was like 5 minutes after watching Texas Chainsaw Massacre, turned the light on, bang, all the lights in the house off. And the fuse box is under the stairs behind a load of boxes and stuff. So I'm there just in the pitch black, absolutely cacking it, trying to fight my way back to the fuses so I can get some light back on. So just a coincidental, terrifying moment.
I'm trying to think if I've ever had an experience like that where I finished watching a movie and then something has happened that has left me absolutely shit scared. I think the one thing that's embarrassed me most when watching a horror movie is I went to see The Conjuring 2, and I know you're a fan of the Conjuring movies, Neil.
Never seen one, don't plan on seeing one.
I never will. And there's a moment, they're very jump scary, and there's a moment in the second one where a ghost appears behind someone and shouts in their ear. And I, at the age of, God, I must have been in my mid-20s at this point, screamed out loud in the cinema while sat with my friend who have never let me forget it. It's always one of those moments when even now, when I go back and watch it, people go, because that was the noise I made when I screamed in the cinema. And everyone, it was one of those moments which, almost ruined the film for me because I was so mortifyingly embarrassed by my own terror.
Good. But the thing is, you are comfortable in your terror, and that's the most important.
For the most part. For the most part.
So what's your favorite scary movie of all time?
So I have two favorite movies of all time, and they are both horror movies. So this feels apt. They're both made by the same person, and I'm not. There's a cigarette paper between them, so I'm going to name them both. I love The Thing, and I love Halloween. They are my some of my favorite movies ever. The Thing, I think, speaks for itself. The visual effects, the level of paranoia, the score in it, just everything about it, I think is a perfect movie. Whereas Halloween, I am willing to admit, is a little wobblier than it is as a movie. It's one of those films that maybe hasn't aged particularly well, but it means an awful lot to me because it's one that me and my sister absolutely adore. We went to see it when they did the re-release in 2018. We went to see it then. We went to we've seen everything in the franchise, and it's just a series that means an awful lot to us as a result. That said, I still think that Halloween is scary because I think there is, we can talk about the metaphor of Michael Myers, as an incarnation of evil that you can project any of your fears on. No, it's terrifying because it's so real. A man with a knife could turn up, and just start stabbing you. And I think the sequence that illustrates it best, and this is potentially controversial because it's not in the 1978 movie, it's in the 2018 one when he's walking down the street on Halloween night, and he's just walking into houses and he's stabbing people at random. And he walks up to that baby's crib, he looks in it, and then my heart was in my mouth during that moment. I was like, they are not going. David Gordon Green is not going to kill a baby, and he doesn't. But the fact that he could make you think for a second that he was going to speaks to everything about that character. So Halloween means an awful lot to me, and it does have, Neil, because as this is supposed to be a film about film festivals, some relevance to film festivals because Did you know that we would not have got Halloween if it wasn't for the Milan Film Festival?
No. Oh, so is this your amazing fact you had for me
This is
today?
my incredible fact. John Carpenter is basically on his ass. He has made Dark Star. He's living, making a living as a writer, but his dreams of directing movies are just not dead, but certainly, not looking very likely. Anyway, so he writes Assault on Precinct 13, then titled The Siege, I think it was. And he's like, this is my big break, right? People were watching it. People were telling him this is amazing. Like it's so good. It's a modern Western. People are going to love this. He's like, yeah. He puts out Assault on Precinct 13 in America. No one goes to see it. It's another flop, and it looks like he's absolutely done for. And he takes a job directing a TV movie, and he's like, I'm done. Sort of like, I'm not going to get the opportunity to make the movies that I want to make. Anyway, meanwhile, Assault on Precinct 13 is shown at the Milan Film Festival by a producer named Erwin Yablans, right? And it goes down an absolute storm. And he's like, this isn't being distributed in Europe, and this can make money in Europe. So he puts it out at the London Film Festival, and it is the cult hit of the festival. Everyone goes wild for it. They're like, this is amazing. Starts making money in Europe. So Irwin goes, right, this guy can make movies, but no one in America knows he can make movies. So I'm going to finance his next film and make an absolute mint on it because, like he doesn't know what his value is at this point. And it was Irwin who had this idea for what he wanted to call the babysitter killer or something like that. He then approaches Carpenter and says, look, Assault on Precinct 13 is doing so well. Will you make this movie? Carpenter was a bit like, don't really know. And he's like, no, we'll do it. Carpenter's like, I need the work. Okay. And the rest is history. It was, for the longest time, the most successful independent movie in cinematic history. I think it had a budget of, and don't quote me on this, 300,000. And
Wow.
I think it maybe 10x, maybe not, between 8 times to 10 times the budget at the box office. It was, and like the highest grossing R-rated movie of all time. I think maybe even until Deadpool came along. So there you go. There's our festival link for that, and I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I think that is, and I think it just shows the power of the box office outside North America as well, and the way that has been a shift a lot more maybe in recent years, but definitely in the past, it's just sort of that idea of a director and making a film that appeals to a European market, but just didn't appeal to an American market, and finding that audience and generating that buzz for a full release through film festivals, which is lovely to hear, Tom.
Exactly. Anyway, I've rattled on about my favorite films an awful lot. What's your favorite horror movie?
So I think we're going to sort of dive into this a bit later, but the horror genre is kind of one that it spans lots of different things. So I very much like some sci-fi horror. So the Alien films growing up were always something I watched and was terrified by. I mean, who isn't scared of facehuggers and xenomorphs? So those films, I have very vivid memories of watching those films with my family when I was growing up. We even went to the Alien Experience at the Trocadero in London, which I don't know if you know about.
No, I don't.
So the Alien Experience, you basically go on. It's like a horror. It's basically like a ghost train, like a haunted house. So you go in and it is the ship, and you walk around with another group of people, and you see the eggs, and you see everything going on, and then they've got sort of facehuggers running around and things. But then about halfway through your trip, it's pretty scary because you sort of got the smoke being blown out of the burst pipes and all that kind of stuff. But then about halfway through the trip, a xenomorph runs out, grabs one of your party who you're with, and drags them off through a back door. Now, obviously, looking on it in hindsight, that person that's dragged off is also an actor, and they have an actor joining every group to be dragged off. But your rational mind doesn't come up with that in the moment. You're just absolutely terrified. And then the rest of the walk through it, you're just bricking it because a xenomorph's just dragged someone off.
Murdered someone else in your party, and you could be next.
So yeah, so I've always really enjoyed the Alien films. I really enjoyed Alien Earth as well, the new series based on Alien. I enjoyed the Alien Romulus last year. I thought that was really good. I think in terms of the first horror films I'm probably going to get my kids to see will be the Gremlins films,
Oh yeah,
because
some Joe Dante.
they are horror films.
Yeah,
They're
I mean
not the
that
first
first
one's
one
scarier than
especially.
the second one.
Yeah, yeah.
The second one leans more heavily into the sort of comedy of it and parodies itself to a degree. But those were probably, again, my earliest experience of that sort of properly scary genre was the Gremlin films. And then in terms of modern times, I think Midsommar is a masterpiece and hauntingly terrifying, and also a sort of just fantastic film without needing a genre label on it. I think it's just a brilliant piece of filmmaking from Ari Aster.
I think Midsummer is like, obviously a lot is made of Hereditary, and Hereditary does have some pretty shocking moments in it. Um, but for me, the first 4 minutes or so of
Oh,
Midsummer are some of the most terrifying things I've ever seen. And Florence Pugh with her, like when she's trying, with her head in her boyfriend's lap, is just one of those images that's burned into my brain and has been since I saw it in the cinema. Like I know, like I'm a bigger fan of the genre than you, Neil. I know that. Like I watch all the crap they put out. So like I've seen Sinister in the cinemas, I've seen Conjuring, I've seen the Insidious movies, and I go to hear people scream and yell and throw popcorn. And that moment in Midsummer, there was no screaming. You could have heard a pin drop in the theater. It was genuinely, I think, one of the most harrowing experiences some people in that room had ever had going to the movies.
yeah, I think that's one of those things. So I'm not a big fan of the genre, and I kind of have warmed to it over the years, in the sense that horrors are really easy. You talked about the low budget side of it with Halloween being really low budget, and horror still is an entryway into filmmaking for a lot of filmmakers, because with a low budget, something that is more likely to make money than any other genre is horror. So doing something in the horror space at a low budget gives you a better chance of recouping on the back end. And that's kind of labeling of things as horror means that things that are maybe sometimes a little bit scary get dressed up in the poster and the trailer and other things to make them more horror, to appeal to that very defined genre market. But I think a lot of films are marketed as horrors, and that would put me off, because when I think of horror, I think of those Halloween films, the Friday the 13th films, the jump scare type films, the big jump scare films. And the jump scare stuff, or the sort of gore porn, isn't my vibe particularly. There's some body horror stuff I like, but generally the jump scare stuff's I'm not really into. But then something like Midsommar isn't about jump scares. It's about it just being pretty horrible for a lot of it, and shocking and disturbing. And I kind of don't mind that. I don't mind being disturbed, but I don't like necessarily being jump scared, because I'm a
Well, that's fair. I think like there was a quote from a producer whose name I'm completely blanking on right now, but he said that the reason why so many first time directors make horror movies is because he used an analogy that if you tell a joke at a dinner party, 1/3 of the room will laugh, 1/3 won't get it, and 1/3 will think that wasn't funny. If you run into the dinner party with a knife, everyone in there is going to be scared. Being scared is universal, and humor and being excited isn't ultimately. Like, people are thrilled by other things. And obviously there's a little bit, you can get a bit granular and you could say people don't like gore, people don't like this. But I do think horror and fear is one of those, like, such a primal emotion. It's very easy to tap into. And that's why so many filmmakers gravitate to it. It is also true that, there is one studio in particular, Blumhouse, whose entire business model is, right, we're going to spend 5 million, yeah, sometimes less. Look at the Paranormal Activity movies, like hundreds of thousands of dollars, which are, in the grand scheme of movie budgets, tiny, and we're going to make 10 times that. And it doesn't matter how many misses we have in the year, because we only need one hit. So if
Yeah.
you make, 5 very low budget horror movies, and one of them makes $1 billion, well, congratulations, your studio is profitable. And it's interesting to take it back to what we were saying in a couple of episodes ago, where we were talking about these like expanding, ballooning budgets, and it's crushed the middle budget movie. This year, we've seen Blumhouse sort of again fall on its arse because it's gone for those bigger budgets. It's started
Yep.
to inflate. It's like maybe we could make more money if we poured more money into the production, and it doesn't work like that. Like it just doesn't. Like Blumhouse has had a difficult year in general, and that's not to say people aren't interested in horror movies. It's just that the business model for it is so specific, and if you don't have a hit, then and you've spent 40 million on it, then you're in real trouble. And I was looking at the domestic box office. This is the US because of course it is, for the highest grossing horror movies of the year. And I think you can probably guess number one.
Sinners.
Sinners. Yes, by a country mile. It's made 100 million more than the next one, which is The Conjuring, which has made 176 million. Then you've got Weapons, Final Destination, 28 years later, Black Phone 2, Nosferatu, I Know What You Did Last Summer, Heart Eyes, and Him. Of those, the Black Phone 2 and think no, oh no, I Know What You Did Last Summer is Sony. There's only one Blumhouse movie on there, which I think is telling from
Yeah.
their domination of the genre a few years ago. But anyway, I thought that was an interesting little factoid.
Yeah, I think it's interesting this year as well. With Warner Brothers, seem to have leaned into horror more than maybe they have done in the past. Because both Sinners and Weapons being Warner releases, and also both of them really breaking outside of the horror mold. So I think Weapons, I think the trailer for it was just so sort of unique and quirky, and I think it kind of broke through to fans outside of core horror fans, just because it was a very talked about kind of event movie. The film itself, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was very funny, lots of it.
Yeah.
It was scary. There were bits of it that were scary, but then I think the second act of it just got nicely silly for me, which I kind of enjoyed.
I would say that, and you are right. Warner Brothers has the top 4 horror movies of the year, like Sinners, Conjuring, Weapons, Final Destination, all Warner movies. And I think you're right. And I think I'm a big fan of Weapons. I think there is a fine line between humor and horror, and it's all about like that level of uncanny. Because obviously, again, people found clowns funny because they looked like people, but they had a silly costume on and a silly red nose. But then you just tip over a little bit to a little bit further, and that's when it becomes scary. And I think the best horror movies can walk that line. Even something like Sinners, which I think is a perfect blend of action, comedy. All of those genres can fit within horror quite easily. The one thing I'll say, and obviously as a fan of the genre, I'm going to say this. What does annoy me is when people try and take away from the genre. And so you get something, and the most famous example is probably Silence of the Lambs. I have seen people trying to rebrand Silence of the Lambs into a psychological thriller for decades now. It is not a psychological thriller. It is a horror movie about a cannibal helping an FBI agent track down another serial killer. Like it is there. A man's face gets cut off and put on someone else's face to escape prison. It is schlocky, pulpy. It is the type of thing that you would have read about in your Penny Dreadfuls back in the Victorian day. And you get people saying like, no, obviously it's not horror. And I see the same for Sinners because obviously it's getting awards buzz. Yep. And I see people trying to say, well, actually, it's not really a vampire
movie.
It's a vampire movie.
Admittedly, for the first half to 2/3, it's not a vampire movie. It's very much a sort of Prohibition era drama to an extent, but it ultimately is 100% a silly vampire movie at the end. And I mean silly in the most flatteringly possible way, because I think it's brilliant and I really, really enjoyed it. But there is something slightly silly about vampires.
Well, entirely. Like it's absolutely silly, but it's knowingly silly. And again, it plays with that silliness. When all the vampires are dancing outside, it's funny, but then it very quickly stops being funny, and then it leans back into the funny when you've got you're gunning down the KKK, like it's very possible to make a good horror movie that has tonal balance within it, and the best ones do. Even again, your favorite franchise, The Conjuring, has funny moments in it beyond, like the horrible jump scares that you don't like.
Yes, no, not a fan of the big jump scares. While you were talking about Silence of the Lambs and its rebranding, what genre label are you allowing me to place on the classic film Seven?
Oh, right. Okay. So that's a good one. I think I want to claim Seven as a horror movie, to be completely honest, because it's a film about Dante's. It's basically a sort of a retelling of Dante's Inferno with two cops. I want to claim it as horror. I'm willing to lean more into the fact that it may be a procedural, but I think it's. I think it comes down to intent, right? Is the film trying to scare you? And and Silence of the Lambs definitely is. I think Silence of the Lambs is definitely trying to make you frightened. I'm not sure if Seven is always trying to scare you. There are moments of it, like when Sloth coughs, which is one of the scariest moments. Like nothing happens except a corpse coughs, and it's like, oh my god. I think that Seven might be more psychological thriller, but I'm loath to admit it, to be completely honest. Would you say it's a horror movie?
I would say sort of my memory of it is being tipping into horror is the way
Yeah,
I would probably put it. I would say again, it's not one of those where they didn't explicitly brand it as a horror, but I think there are elements of it is pretty scary when you're watching it.
yeah,
Like you are scared. When he's
I think
opening that
so.
box, when he's opening the box, you're scared.
You know what? I've just remembered what happens with the sin of lust in it as well. So no, it's
Yes.
absolutely a horror movie. Like
Yeah.
it just is. It's genuinely quite frightening at times. So no, we will have it. Yeah, it's a horror movie.
So I have the pleasure of being at home all on my own on Friday night because my children are both at sleepovers and my wife is away for her mother's 70th birthday. So
Oh, lovely.
which means I can watch whatever film I like, which when I'm sat at home on a Friday evening isn't the sort of thing that happens. So it's Halloween, so I'm going to need to watch a horror film. Tom, last time I did it, it was Midsommar. I sat and watched by myself in the house. What are you trying to convince me to watch that maybe I've not seen on Friday night?
So I'm going to recommend two things. I'm going to recommend something from 2025. I'm going to recommend an older movie. My pick from 2025 is Bring Her Back.
Okay.
Have you seen Bring Her Back?
No, I've not seen Bring Her Back. So the horror films I saw this year were Sinners, I saw Weapons, and I saw Together.
Together's good. Not
Yeah,
particularly scary, but good.
No, but definitely a horror film, Tom.
Yes, 100% a horror film. I would say Bring Her Back. Bring Her Back is of Sally Hawkins.
Yeah, I've seen
Mrs. Brown
the
from
trailer. The
Paddington.
trailer scared me, to be honest, Tom.
Yeah, well, the movie is much worse, and I think like I left the theater slightly trembling. It's a creepy one, but I think it's this type of thing you'll like. It's disturbing, and there are moments of shocking violence, but it's not trying to make you jump. And when it does make you jump, and it will, those moments feel really earned. Like you're not going to come away from it thinking, "Oh, that was cheap," or I feel like
Yeah.
I've been. And my other one is, have you ever seen The Changeling?
No, I don't think I have.
So The Changeling is a really interesting haunted house movie about a composer who moves into an old house and starts seeing things. I won't spoil it for you. And he very quickly, while he's there, realizes that the ghost is trying to tell him something, and he starts to investigate, and it's really, really creepy. Actually, like it was a movie I watched for the first time while all alone, and I was like, oh, I'm going to turn the lights out, and I'm going to, get comfy, scare myself. And I did scare myself. I had to turn the lights on while I was watching it because it's just got this really eerie atmosphere that's quite hard to explain. But when you're watching it, you will feel just really uneasy for the entire time it's on. And again, not really a jumpy one. It's a little more cerebral, Neil, as I think you like those types of movies. And if you don't believe me, Martin Scorsese had it on his list of the best horror movies ever made. I think he might have put it in the top 5.
Oh, right.
So
Well,
me and Marty would recommend The Changeling, which I think might still be on BBC iPlayer.
I will check one of those out at the very least.
And Bring Her Back might be on Amazon Prime.
I will definitely check one of those out on Friday night, and hopefully I will be able to sleep and I won't have to go around constantly locking all the doors and checking that I'm safe in my own house. Although,
You should do that anyway. You should probably do that anyway.
yeah, but I'd not multiple times during the night.
No, that's true. No, that's true.
Cool. I thought of something else to ask you then, but I've completely forgotten. Oh, no, I was just going to say, so the other film, I say I don't like sort of big, jumpy, scary films, but I did go and watch the first Saw movie in the cinema. And I do remember really enjoying the first Saw movie. I think after that, I think I watched the second one and just went, well, now this is just nonsense. But the first one was, I think it's easy to forget because of what the Saw movies became, how kind of unique and different the first Saw movie was, because it was a bit of a gore porn sort of film. But that scene where he's locked in the prison at the start, or the room at the start, and he finds out he's got to basically remove his own eye to get a key out, was pretty cool.
See, I think the Saw. I'm not a fan of the Saw franchise, but I think you're right. I think the first one is underappreciated, like because people forget that before we found out who Jigsaw was, that first one is a murder mystery as well.
Yes.
Like you're trying to work out who's done this to them and why, which I think is what elevates it beyond just the gore porn. And there are some really shocking deaths in it, like the shotgun to the head when the cop walks into the room is like one of those whoa moments. I believe certainly the second one it got die-harded. It was basically a spec script that had been going around for a while, and they were
Right.
like, we need a sequel to this. Slap Saw on it and like retrofit it into that universe, a little like they did with Die Hard 2 and 3. And then I believe they were like, right, now we need a coherent plan, and the Saw movies turned into absolute schlop, which just dreadful movies. Sorry, I'm not going to defend them.
No, I don't, again, so I sort of gave up after 2, but I think it spoils how good 1 was. The first one was, I think, a really, really good film.
Yeah, I'd say so.
And then in terms of other classics, I remember watching on my own, when I was on my own growing up in a 250-year-old house that I was convinced had something horrible in the attic. So our bathroom, we had an attic with a rickety, horrible old staircase you had to go up to get to the attic, covered in spider webs. It was just slightly spooky. I'd go up to the attic, it was fine. But our bathroom, the big old creaky door with a big brass key lock on it, was in the corner of the bathroom.
Oh.
So if you were just going to the loo upon an evening, you had to sit next to this door that led to the creepy attic. So that door just used to... Me and my sister have discussed it since on how terrifying that door was, just like having to go and brush your teeth and staring at this door.
Absolutely not.
So I watched the first Blair Witch Project while at home alone.
No. No fun to be had there. Absolutely not.
And that has no gore in it whatsoever. That's just proper psychological, you're making yourself scared business.
That's just 3 people in the woods slowly losing their minds while they film themselves. Yeah, that movie, there's a history of that movie is really interesting, just in terms of like how it was produced. I don't know if you know this, and we're running out of time because obviously we don't want this to overrun. But basically, the director just dropped them off in the woods and said, here's what I need you to talk about today. Follow the map to this location, and at that location there'll be supplies for you to pick up. But because they were running out of money, they started giving them less and less food, and then that made them angrier with each other. And then they were like, oh, this is good, isn't it? Obviously, the original plan for the Blair Witch was that it would be much more of like a documentary made from the found footage, rather than us just watching the raw tapes like it is now. And they told those actors, "Oh, we're only going to use about 15 minutes of the footage from you in the woods." Then they would get in when they were meeting with them to give them the supplies. They were taking the dailies, and they were like, "Oh, actually, this is the movie. These people slowly going mad." And loads of stuff in that film just improvised. Improvised is the right word for it, but also them genuinely getting frustrated with each other. And they were told, like when he throws the map in the river, that was just something the guy did because he was losing his mind. Like he was just like really, really grumpy one day and threw the map in the river. And the level of frostiness between them, it was natural. And one day they go to pick up their supplies, and the guy who disappears at the end of the movie is just told, leave the camp tonight at this time. If anyone sees you, tell them you're going for a piss. Do not return. And then when they woke up, he was gone. That's real in the morning when they're filming. They're like, okay, they found that house. So when they went in that house, they grabbed the guy and like took him down. Left her walking around the house, absolutely shitting herself. And then at the end, she walked into that basement and he really was stood in the corner. She didn't know what was happening. And then a production handler grabbed her and the camera falls to the floor. That is actually, that happened. They were just like, grabbed her and were like, I cannot imagine how horrible that shooting experience was.
Yeah, I mean, the budget for it was so low, they weren't getting paid a lot of money for it.
So again, I know a little bit about it. they were paid to do it, but they were promised if this movie makes more than $1 million, you will get like some real money from it. That movie, I think, made 30 million off its budget. I don't think they got I'm not entirely sure they got everything they were owed on that. Maybe by now, but certainly some creative accounting may have been used.
Wow. Creative accounting, often the bane of someone with a percentage on the back end's life.
Yeah, exactly. Unfortunately, yes.
Cool. So I think the
meanwhile-
message of this podcast is that even if you think you're not a fan of horror, there is something for you within the genre, and you probably have watched stuff that is very close, if not tipping into horror, without realizing it.
I completely agree. I think, even stuff as silly as one of the scariest scenes I remember watching as a kid was in Roger Rabbit with the dip. Like when they put the cartoon, terrifying. Judge Doom, terrifying. Like I can think of Jafar turning into a giant snake, horrifying as a child. So it's just
Well, if you ever watched The Black Cauldron.
Oh God, no! Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's just it's ingrained in every genre, and I think it's very easy to say I don't like horror because people have a very specific idea of what it is, and quite often they're thinking about some of the more unimaginative forms the genre can take. When in fact they probably do like horror, they probably just don't like gore, like yourself, or torture porn or things like that. There is fun to be had in the horror genre, even if you are a little bit squeamish.
So yes, go out this weekend, Halloween, find something within the genre that suits. If you've not seen Midsommar, I suggest that's an amazing place to start because although the first 5 minutes will possibly make you just want to turn it off. So maybe that's not the place to start.
Bear in mind that Halloween is on a Friday this week, this year. Maybe not want to kick off the weekend.
So maybe go for Gremlins, just for a bit of nostalgia and some fun.
Yeah, I think Gremlins is a shout.
Right, brilliant. I'm not sure what we're talking about next time. I think we're going to be talking about some of the new releases coming out, some of the LFF holders, some of the festival titles from this year that are now being released on wide release. We've got the Masterminds coming up. We've got other films like that. So I think we'll be talking about some more festival titles that are getting wide releases and probably talking about an early awards buzz for certain films and actors as well. So join us next time for that. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast on whichever platform you are listening to us on, and come back next time for more film chat between screenings.
Bye-bye.